Hey, you guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Nunnery, and I am really glad that you're here with us today. I'm excited to have Lindsay Mimnagh with us. Lindsay, you may know from Treehouse Schoolhouse. She has a lot of resources there, a lot of great content that she's sharing with moms, even while she's homeschooling her kids and has just come through a great big time of transition. I'm excited to talk about that. But Lindsay, welcome to the show today. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Leslie. This is going to be such a good conversation. I can feel it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive in. As is often the case for those of you who are listening in, I got to chat, or we got to chat for a little while beforehand, and really wish that I had been running the record during that time because so much great conversation happened. So I'm eager for you to be able to dive in with us as well. But Lindsay, for those who may not know you yet, give us a little bit of just really kind of information on who you are and what God has allowed you to do through the years.
Okay, so hey guys, I'm Lindsay. I have four babies. I'm going to be calling them babies forever. You do that, right, Leslie?
Oh, I do. Yeah,
Okay.
my babies are 24 and 22 and
Okay, good.
but yeah, they're
Because
always your
they're
babies.
they're starting to say, "Mom, I'm not a baby anymore." I'm like, "Don't say that." So
That's
my
right.
littlest is 3, and then I have a 5-year-old, so he's just starting to read, and it's so much fun. And then I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we live in North Carolina. We are outdoors people. My husband and I are both entrepreneurs. We are visionaries. We're always getting ourselves in trouble with all kinds of ideas,
Hmm.
so we have to be careful. I was a educator before I was a mother privately. I was in children's ministry full time. I was a missionary for a while, and then I was hired at a church to oversee all of their children's ministries, and really fell in love with creating my own curriculum for our church and for Sunday school classes. Nothing I found satisfied me, so I kind of like started tweaking everything. And then when I became a nanny, they asked me to homeschool their child, and so I started homeschooling full time as a nanny. They had 2 children, so before I even had my own children, I was diving into this world of curriculum development because I would do it for my students, and of discipleship with children. And I just fell in love with all of that. And so I took both of those passions, education and discipleship and curriculum writing, I guess 3 things. And when I had my own children, I started to develop, resources for our own home when they started preschool and kindergarten age. And out of that birthed this blog that I have, Treehouse Schoolhouse. It's a blog, it's a Instagram account, it is a YouTube channel. And after I was sharing content and connecting with the community for the first couple of years, I created a Christmas guide, and I just started creating things for my own children out of my experience and what I wanted to see, and I couldn't find. And it just blew up in the community. And it was
Hmm.
such a blessing to my family. And I thought, oh, I guess this is a thing. Okay, Lord, is this something I'm doing? And so over time, over the last 5 years, we've developed a Christmas guide. We have an Easter guide that we're starting in a couple weeks. I have 4 seasons of nature study, and everything is very Charlotte Mason-esque. You're going to see picture study and poetry and hands-on connections and crafts and living books and lots of hands-on learning with your whole body, discipleship. I have a lot of resources for discipleship. That's one of my passions.
Hmm.
So we started creating all of this, and now I have a full team of people that work with me so that I can be full-time homeschooling mom and do this in my margins. And I'm just so grateful that the Lord has given me this opportunity.
That's it's so exciting to hear how God leads his people, but also how he takes what he's already put in your hand. And those are the things that he actually allows you to serve him through. I think of Moses so often. What is that in your hand? It was a staff. And that staff God used pretty mightily in the days to come with Pharaoh and leading the children of Israel and so on. And he's faithful to do the same with us. The skills, the talents, the opportunities that he puts in our hand, he allows us to give right back to him in ways that we would have often never ever expected or dared to dream. I mean, it's his ways are so much bigger and higher than ours that it is truly a privilege to serve him and walk with him.
It absolutely is, and there's so many forks in in my path. If you would have followed my story,
Mhm.
I where it wasn't just like A to B. It's like
Yeah.
I tried to go to college to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. I thought, okay, I love children. I love teaching. I knew that was my passion since I was young. But as I was in my first year of college, I felt like the Lord was telling me, there's something more, there's
Mm,
something different. So I switched schools after a year, which made my parents upset. It was confusing. I went to a ministry school instead, and then I was in youth ministry for a while, and I'm like, no, that's not it. So it's like hearing the Lord in all the seasons of your life and pivoting and saying, oh, I think I missed it, Lord, would you help me, would you correct my path? And then also, there were a lot of difficult things that I went through that led me to where I am now.
mm,
I don't share all of those publicly because they have to do with other people, but it wasn't a point A to point B situation. It
right.
was like I went through trials, and then now those trials that I overcame are now being used in my life with my own children, in my own marriage, and in my ministry. And so, yeah, if nothing else, my life is a testimony of messy can forces you to cling to the Lord, and if you stay close to him, he will direct your steps, and there can be something really beautiful and meaningful on the other side.
Oh, absolutely. And he is so good and so faithful to take those times that were difficult, the trials, the hardships, the things that we would never ask for, like you were noting before, and he gives us context for them. He actually redeems those situations in our own minds and hearts as we're able to then see good come out of it later on. But in order to get to that place, you really have to be seeking him, walking with him, in order to allow him to redeem them in your sight. He is in control, whatever decisions we are making. But for us to enjoy the redemption of those difficult things requires us to really be walking with him and seeing things the way that he does.
Absolutely. And surrendering, constant
Hmm.
surrender, saying, Lord,
Yeah,
use this for your glory. I want to be used by you. And I mean, I was saying that since I was 12, 13, 14. And so it's really beautiful to look back and see his hand. And I'm excited because I feel like I've lived a lot of life, but I have so much more. And I'm like, Lord, how do you want to use me? And all this time too, we're very open with our children. So as you referenced, we just went through a really big transition in our family life, and it was a difficult time. My kids saw me at rock bottom some of that time.
yeah.
And through that, they saw me cling to the Lord, and they saw him be faithful. And that's what we really need to give our children when they're in our home, is an authentic view of what it looks like to walk with Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the privileges of being we call it heart schooling around here, a heart schooling parent who is focused on the mission that God has given us, and then using these opportunities to bring them along with us as we are growing closer to Jesus. We are able to just very naturally give our kids a foundation for their faith. As we are growing, we are bringing them along. That's what discipleship is anyway. It's leveraging what God is teaching me on behalf of someone else. And we have so many opportunities to do that. And it's exciting to see the evidence as your kids are growing of that faith taking root in them. And then you just kind of stand in awe that God has allowed you to play a part in that in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was recently on a show, and it's like someone really wanted me to talk about the specific intentional things that we do to disciple, and my response was, there I feel like that's like 5%. Like it's
Yeah.
5% the books we use, the resources we use, even what the curriculum I've developed that's a family discipleship curriculum. It's
Yeah.
5% that, it's 10% that maybe. And that is a foundation sometimes of those other conversations, but 99% of the time, or I'm getting all my math wrong, clearly that's not my strong suit, is the everyday stuff. It's
Yeah.
the conflict you have in your family, and then you talk through it and you talk about what Jesus would do and what he's speaking to you about it. It's the humility when you screw up in front of your kids and you come to them and you say, that's not the way that I should have responded. Jesus convicted me, and
Mm,
this is what he said, and I'm sorry. And it's the everyday stuff, and that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that we get so much time. We have so much time
right.
with them to just disciple in our everyday lives. And if we don't have a thriving relationship with the Lord, then it does feel like a stretch. But if it's
Yeah.
something that we're meeting with the Lord and we are in that vibrant relationship with the Lord, then it feels effortless, really, to just talk to our children about what we're learning and how we're
It's just
growing
an
and what he's
overflow.
saying.
Yeah.
It's an overflow. And so the first step is to be there yourself as a mom. It's to
Right.
get in the word, it's to cling to him in the good times and the bad times. And if you're listening and you don't even know where to start, it's just so simple, just to come to him, just to talk to him, just to open the word of God. And he is like so eager, he's so
Yeah.
eager to disciple us so that we can disciple our children.
Absolutely. Actually, as you were talking, I was thinking back. David and I just did a podcast very recently about the simplicity of our mission and about how we tend to complicate things so much because we're wanting to. I think there's a control element there. We want to, if we can have a curriculum or if we can have something tangible that we can control, then we'll feel comfortable with discipling our kids. But the discipleship of our children happens in those in between times,
It
those
does.
those times that if you're not engaged with them, you miss it. But because as homeschool parents, especially, and really any Christian parent is called to heart school their kids or disciple their children, parent them biblically. But as homeschool parents, we are able to really take advantage of those in between times, have those conversations, take those detours, go for the heart of a situation rather than just dealing with what we see, but finding out what's underlying it so we can teach them to think biblically through these difficult times or even the good times. Help them not to allow the good times to make them think more highly of themselves than they should. We're able to really give them the tools that will serve them well for the rest of their lives.
Oh, it's such an honor, isn't it?
It is an amazing privilege. There is no question. I wanted to ask you about something though. We were talking before, and you alluded to it when we just got started here as well, about some of the opportunities and some of the ways that God has opened doors for you to serve. He's given me opportunities I would have never thought of. And so many of the moms who listen in have a message on their heart or a dream of something that they feel like God is wanting them to do. How did you overcome the fear of stepping out? Because I know that you felt it, because I felt it. There's this little bit of fear of stepping out, of all the ramifications of it. And then how have you seen God faithful as you've been serving him and doing, producing stuff for other people, actually being willing to be a voice out there, even while you're homeschooling and parenting your children?
I feel very unqualified to answer this question because it's been this like very rocky journey for me personally. I had all of this inside of me that I wanted to get out in the world. I mean, before I was a mother, I was in ministry full time. I was on the mission field, as I said. And so when I became a mom, it was very hard for me to slow down and to focus on that baby and just to stay
Mm,
home. And there was a season where the Lord did call me to that, where it was 5 years, the first 5 years of my motherhood, where I tried to step out. I tried to start groups. Because that was just like what I usually did. And every time the Lord brought me back and would gently tell me, no, not
yeah.
now, and that your ministry is here. And I struggled with that. We were also really struggling financially. So I was always spinning my wheels of how I could help, because we
Hmm.
had two babies back to back and they both ended up having hearing loss. So we had a lot of special needs situations that we needed to pay for. So I'm over here trying to spin my wheels, and the Lord just kept gently saying no. And so it
Hmm.
goes back to hearing him, as like everything in life. And finally, when Treehouse Schoolhouse started, it was kind of a happy accident. And I was just trying to do something that would give me an outlet and to share without any monetary thought. I was just thinking, I'll have a blog and that will be a fun thing I do at nap time. And the Lord had a different plan. And so time and time again, I went to him and I said, Lord, I want to lay this down because it feels like I cannot do this
Hmm.
and give my full affection and attention to my home and my children like I want to. And the last thing I want to do is sacrifice my children
Right.
for this calling. And so many times I got really close to laying it down, and the Lord would stop me. And basically, what I heard him say is, if you try to do it in your own strength, you will fail.
Hmm.
You will sacrifice your family for this thing that you're called to. But if you do it with me, all things are possible. And I
Yeah.
can, if you abide in me, there is a way. And even though you don't see how, there is a way for you to be a voice in the world and for you to make a difference outside of your home. while also making your family your number one priority.
Mm,
Because I've also seen a lot of people in ministry sacrifice their children for
absolutely.
the kingdom. And it was a fear thing for me. I was afraid that
Hmm.
that's what would happen. And so I kind of made a vow with the Lord, or like a vow to myself, that I would never like really get into full time, or not full time. I would never really fully get into ministry again or whatever when I had children at home, because I was afraid that that's what I would do. And the Lord just said, no, if you're called to this, then there's a way to carry it. So over the last few years, it's been bumpy. My husband and I have had to continually talk and say, like, okay, what are your best yeses? And that's been like
Mm,
me and the Holy Spirit's conversation over the last 5 years is, what am I asking you to do right now? And what am I asking you to put on the shelf? And so, just for an example, I've been asked to write a book with a huge book deal. And I said no, because I felt like the Lord said no. I've been asked to travel around the United States and speak. I said no. I mean, I'm constantly getting inquiries that I'm going, oh my gosh, is this the thing? Should I say yes?
yeah,
And just keeping my eyes focused on the couple things the Lord said to put my energies into for this season. And maybe that stuff will come. But right now, I don't need to, it's the control thing. I don't need to be afraid that if I say no now, the Lord wouldn't open that door again later.
absolutely.
Because if I can go to bed at night knowing I said yes to the things the Lord said, and I honored my family and I put them first, then like I can go to sleep at bed. I can sleep well. So I don't want to sacrifice that. So and then just a couple practical things is time blocking my life. I try really hard not to mix the two worlds. So I
Hmm.
have, I used to have my computer open while I'm also trying to homeschool, and I'm trying to juggle this things happening on my phone. And then and I just realized quickly that I wasn't giving my all. I wasn't giving my best to either place. And
Right.
so there's a time and place for my work, and there's a time and place for my family. And I try not to cross those boundaries, being really clear with everyone in my life about that. Um, and then I've also delegated a lot. I've been willing to grow slower as a business and as a ministry by delegating and paying for people to do jobs that I could take more time to do, but I'd rather be
Right.
with my children. So
Right.
we have 8 people on my team now. And, we wouldn't need all of those people if I carried more, but that was the direction the Lord kept telling me to go, is focus on the thing I'm telling you, find people for the other jobs. And it's given other moms opportunities to use their gifts. So
Yeah.
that's been really beautiful. And then just the faithfulness of God. I've been able to see so many families tell me the first time I've ever opened the Word of God with my children is because I bought your Christmas curriculum, or
Oh,
because
praise
I
the
bought
Lord.
your Easter curriculum. I've never had a conversation about the gospel with my child until we did your Easter
Wow.
curriculum. So many things like that. And then mom saying, I felt like I was so unqualified. I could never homeschool. I could never do this, but I wanted to. And then I just watched your everyday life, because I share a lot of behind the scenes with my own
Hmm.
family. Um, and it's doable. I can see that it's doable because you're doing it. And I try to stay real about, this kid just is struggling with this thing, or this kid's peeing on the floor where I'm trying to teach math. And I think just being honest about the journey helps moms see that they can do it too, and that they are the most qualified person for the job because they love their child more than anyone else.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
I just love it. I love that I get to share practical things and encouragement and hold mom's hands through the beginning stages of learning what does it mean to disciple my child. It's an honor, for real.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you alluded earlier, you actually mentioned the fact that there is a little bit of a fear of stepping out. I'm going to neglect this to do that. And you got to always come back to the fact that Jesus told us that his yoke is easy and his burden is
Yes.
light. And if we are walking yoked up the way that we are supposed to, he is going to take off the things that would be detrimental to our family. It is not going to put a wedge. That is never his plan. And what I've seen through, years and years and years of battling really with the same fears. God, don't let this ministry, don't let this thing disrupt my kids. Don't ever let them think that this is more important than them or than you. Um, God, because we have done all of this with them, they have been on site, they have been involved in everything that God has allowed David and I to do. The kids have walked right along with us. God has actually used it to strengthen their faith, to give them a view of the needs of people, to give them a love for investing in other people. And now that I have adult kids, I'm seeing the fruit of that, and they're amazing, and they have this desire to serve in them as very young adults that I don't know was fully developed in me because I hadn't had the experience of getting to do all of the things that they have gotten to do growing up. So actually teach them diligently has been a huge blessing to my relationship with my kids and my ability to disciple them, though I was afraid that it would be a detriment, a hindrance.
That's really, really encouraging to me because I'm still in the beginning stages and I'm
Yeah.
not. I mean, I do see some of that fruit because we talk to the kids all the time. Hey guys, we're about to release this curriculum that could be into so many homes that's going to disciple children, and let's pray over it. Like
Yep.
things like that where they're coming alongside and then we're turning around and saying, this is how many people have this thing. Let's pray for these families. But we're still in these baby steps and I don't see
Mm-hmm.
the big picture, but that is really encouraging and it really challenges me to keep them close and keep talking to them about it. One thing I've seen in them is their creativity because I am very passionate about creativity and I'm always bouncing ideas off of my own children. I just was doing it this morning. What do you think? Do you think people would like this idea? And then my kids jump in and they're like, oh, you know what you could do? You could do this and let me help you with that.
Love it.
And I think it's inspiring them to just be creative and what is their gifting? How could they, and we're always talking about how can you use the way God wired you to reach
Yeah.
people for him and to bring light and inspiration to the world. And they're getting to see that front and center because they see my passion. They get to see me really walking in my calling. And I think it's, yeah, I think the enemy would love to tell us that it can steal and kill and destroy our families
Mm-hmm.
because he wants to stop us. But if we stay in line with the Lord and we're constantly close, because it could derail us if we were not careful. And if we didn't,
Right.
if it became about us or if we just made it an idol, it could. And so I don't want to
Absolutely.
discredit that. But if we stay close to the Lord's heart on it, and our heart is truly just to reach people and to love people and to do it in his way and in his timing, it can be something that really feeds our children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's God strengthens our faith in him too as we walk in obedience and trust that he will faithfully bring our kids along with us. And so he uses that to truly strengthen our faith, our resolve to follow him, our trust, our recognizing that we have to cast our care and those we care about on him because he cares for them even better than we could. So there's a lot of work that he does in our own hearts even as he is working in theirs. It's God's plans for his people are so amazing. And when you walk in obedience, there's so many ways that he gives you little nuggets of you get a little insight into what he's doing in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. It's awesome, honestly. um I wanted to transition just a little bit to talking about you noted that you've gone through this big time of transition in your family, not just with building the house that you all have worked on for so long, but also the ministry that you've started, the different, as your kids grow, there's just natural transitions that are built in because they're getting older. So, what you did before doesn't work the same. So you're constantly growing up. What do you say to families as they are trying to stay on mission, trying to make sure that they're homeschooling well, even as things are more fluid? They're transitioning. They're seeing a lot of changes. How do you encourage families in those times?
I think it's a lot of what we've already talked about, that discipleship is in all the in between moments. And so for me, so backstory is that we just built a house. It was a 5-year journey that went so much longer than we expected. We ended during those 5 years, we lived in an RV for a little while. We tried to sell a house. It didn't work. We moved back in. We got pregnant. We renovated the house to try to sell it again. We ended up downsizing into a rental and sold half of our belongings,
Hmm.
90% of our belongings, really. And then we thought we were going to be moving into our new house build, and COVID delayed it like 2 years. So just
Wow.
lots and lots of transition and lots of difficulty and a lot of disappointment. And sometimes feeling like we were at a dead end, and bringing our children along, all of that while I was building this business. And so again, saying, can I do this right now? Is this the right
Right.
time, Lord? So that's kind of a peek into the last 5 years. And we are literally just on the other side. We
Hmm.
just moved in. The house is livable, but not done. We've got our certificate of occupancy, but there's still construction everywhere. My husband's still
Huh.
working on this house. So this is the life that we're living in. And I feel like I've learned so much because this whole time we've been homeschooling in unideal situations. And I've also been having a whole business where I talk about homeschooling while I'm
Yeah.
homeschooling in the most difficult situations, in an RV without all of our stuff, in a really tiny rental house without a lot of storage. And I think it's been encouraging for people to see, like, homeschooling doesn't have to look like what you might
Yeah.
see on certain websites or what you might see on certain influencer sites. It's like, homeschooling is you have your children in whatever situation you have them, and you spend all the time that you have with them just doing life
Hmm.
and pouring what you have into them, which sometimes looks like formal education and sometimes looks like packing boxes and moving things and having the kids watch as you go through trials and talking with them about that. So for the last few months, we've really not done what I would consider a full formal homeschooling day. And we're smack in the middle of the school year. And I'm writing homeschool curriculum that other people are using, but I can't because I'm in transition. And
Yeah.
so this is the reality of life with this is the reality of life. You're going to have transitions where someone is sick for a while, a, a grandparent dies, you're traveling a lot, you have a new baby, things that you sit down at the beginning of the school year and you plan out your year, and then your year gets derailed and you
Yeah.
say, my kids would be better off in school because I'm not giving them what I planned for this year. And so my encouragement is to change your mindset,
Hmm.
because all of life is learning. And if you can go back to what is success in my home, what is education, and if it looks like sitting down with workbooks, then maybe you will feel like a failure. But if it looks like having those in between conversations, bringing your children alongside all of those experiences, and really dedicating yourself to an ongoing conversation with them and training them, then it won't feel like a failure because they'll
Right.
still be learning so much and so much more than you would even imagine. The other thing is, academically, you can get your children to a point where they can really do a lot independently. And I try to
Hmm.
do that as soon as I can so that when we're in difficult seasons, there is a bare bones. We are homeschooling the bare bones for this season, and you can do that on your own for an hour a day, going through your math lesson, going through your grammar lesson, reading independently. I can check it. Now you play and you're still learning, but it doesn't have to look like me sitting down with you for 5 hours when I cannot. And so my encouragement is to see your home as an atmosphere of learning, your life as a whole catalyst of learning. And if you're doing life with your children, then it doesn't have to look the same month to month or even year to year. And they're going to be okay.
Absolutely. Well, I think we underestimate how adaptable and flexible kids really are. They roll with this stuff, generally
They
speaking,
do.
so much better than we give them credit for. And the way that we roll with it actually sets a really great example for them, because we're showing where our priorities are, we're showing where our faith is, where our trust is, through all of these things. And those times of transition, those times, like you noted, that you wouldn't write in your lesson planner, you don't mark out a season of difficulty or health or caring for loved ones or whatever. You don't plan those in advance, but we can trust that God is walking with us and that his ways are perfect, and that he did know this was coming. And so we're actually able to use those times of difficulty and transition to increase our children's view of God and their trust in him, even as as we're growing in our own. Because I have found, anyway, that God taught me so many lessons through those types of periods in our life that strengthened my faith, because I was so keenly aware that my example was going to impact my kids. That drove me much closer to the Lord. That drove me to my knees. That made me focus in on making sure that I was right before God so that I could present him right for my kids. So he uses these seasons powerfully in all of our lives.
Oh, so much. And it's just so humbling because I look back at the last few months and I failed a lot. And then I was able to come to my kids and say, I wasn't leaning on the Lord in the way
Yep.
that I should have. And I was leaning on my own strength. And I was putting all my hope in thinking that, we were going to be moving at this time or this time. And my joy is not in what we have. My joy is not in our circumstances. My joy is found in the Lord. And
Mm.
um, making fun out of difficult times too. So
Yeah.
we basically packed up all of our house in August because we thought we would be moving in September. And literally everything. I mean, besides my bare minimum kitchen and the kids had suitcases, I packed everything up. And so our school stuff was packed from September and we didn't move in until January.
Wow.
And so through holidays, I mean, it was really rough. And every time something would get delayed, I had a choice to make. I had a choice to fall on my face and live in depression and frustration and cause all of that in my home because we set the tone really in our
Mm-hmm.
home. Or I
Absolutely.
had a choice to say to the kids, well, let's go get a board game because we need something to do. And it was winter. And so we bought like 20 new board games between that like 3 months. And we basically played games and did puzzles for like 3 months because I was like, I'm not unpacking all of our school stuff. We are game schooling and we are
Yep.
learning how to be adaptable, including mommy. They are so much more flexible and adaptable than I am.
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
I'm watching my children going, how are you okay with this? Okay, Lord, give me what they have. Help me to be
Yep.
flexible. I am not flexible in my old age. Lord, help me be flexible. They'll sleep anywhere. They don't care. They'll eat wherever. I'm like, okay, I'm getting to be too old because that's hard for me.
Yep.
But they
Yep.
teach us a lot, don't they?
They do. They do. And the way that, even the way that we kind of see them rolling with things, like you noted, it can challenge us, it can encourage us. But our reaction to those delays, our reaction to those detours, one thing that I don't think we talk about nearly enough is we know we recognize how that impacts our kids, but not how that impacts our husbands. The fact
Oh,
that we
yeah.
are walking in faith and we're able to actually strengthen our husband's resolve by our not freaking out, by our showing that we believe in him and the way that he is leading our family. That is one of the greatest gifts that we can give our guys, just by showing them that honor that we truly trust and believe in them, and we're walking with them, come what may. That's one of the things I think we don't talk about enough.
Oh, absolutely. And I also failed in that area some. So,
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
right.
and we all fall on our faces, and yet God uses those. Again, I've fallen on my face 1,000 times. And finally, I'm able to look back and see, okay, this is how I need to react. I've had great conversations with David coming out of some of those things that I would say, thinking that I was actually, taking his side in things. God, I was actually really reinforcing an insecurity or a bitterness or something that he was
Mm.
struggling to get past, when I thought, I didn't see it that way. And so God has taught me so much. And that's why I really want to make sure that us moms understand our reaction to these times of transitions, these difficulties, impacts our spouses in ways that we will never, ever understand. And so be mindful of that. And then when you do fall on your face, make it right. Just,
Yes,
that
absolutely.
that is a great time for making up and all the wonderful things that go along with that.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I feel like during this whole transition, there were definitely seasons where he would communicate to me that I'm running this direction, trying to maintain the children and these things. And then he's trying to build the house, and that we were kind of like not partnered up.
Yep.
And so it was a constant bringing back of our hearts together of like, especially because he was working so much and we have 4 children and we're running all these things. And you can all of a sudden stop and go, whoa, we're not even connected right now.
Yeah.
And really trying to come back together and say, we have a mission together. All of this is for the Lord. All of
Mm-hmm.
this is around one mission, and that's to know him and to make him known. That's to our
Yep.
children, that's to the world. Everything we do in our life comes back to that. And we're not called to do that separately. We're called to be arm in arm. But the enemy so badly wants to wedge us, in our hearts. And part of that is our reactions to things, because men take things on personally, even if it
Yeah.
isn't, even if they don't need to, or even if that's not true.
Our intent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Even if that's not our heart, like, in this situation, he's physically building the house. And he's the one in charge of all of these things. So if there's a delay that's completely out of his control and I'm disappointed, he immediately thinks I'm disappointed in him. And
Exactly.
so it's communicating, it's over communicating, affirming,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing everything you can possibly do. I am disappointed, but it's nothing about you. We're in this together. You're disappointed too. And giving them
Yeah.
space to talk about their own emotion in it. And I think that really helped, just to say, it's us against this project. It's not you and the project against me or something,
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
yeah, the enemy loves to sneak in and just deceive us and try to wedge us apart in these hard times,
Absolutely.
but come out
And
on the
it's
other
so
side stronger.
important. Yeah. And it's so important to not allow that, because the strength of your marriage impacts your children profoundly. It impacts your ability to homeschool, to parent, to do all of these things. And again, speaking as one who can tell you for sure, it's a blink of an eye before they're flying and you're down to just the two of you again. And it's a fun, wonderful time, but it's very, very, it's different. It's, as they start moving out and starting their own lives, you recognize how important it really was that you kept those lines of communication, that you kept focusing on your marriage first and foremost. That is the relationship physically that is the most important, because that is the bedrock that everything else is built on. And so, in those times of transition, really guard your heart towards your spouse. Make sure that you are keeping that relationship in focus, because it's so very important.
Thank you for sharing that with me. That's very encouraging to me.
Well, good. Well, good. Well, Lindsay, we are about out of time, but I want you to tell everyone where they can find you. We'll link all this in the show notes, but it's good to hear it. So where can we find you, and, kind of how can they engage with you going forward?
Well, you can find me at treehouseschoolhouse.com. And if you're on Instagram, that's where you'll see kind of the behind the scenes more. And I love to go over there and share a lot of content. And that's treehouse_schoolhouse. So on treehouseschoolhouse.com, you can find my blog and a lot of freebies. I love sharing book lists, free weeks of our curriculum. And that's also where you can find all of the resources that we create. And then also in the show notes, I'll have a code for you guys that will give you 15% off your order. So yeah.
Fantastic. Always exciting. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. It has been a joy, and I know it's been an encouragement to all who listened in. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I feel like I'm going away with my cup filled, and that I have some things to talk to the Lord about. And thank you for your encouragement as a mom who's been there, and now you're kind of in the rear view mirror place in your life. So thanks a lot.
Well, you are very welcome. I'm always grateful when God orchestrates conversations in that way. To the rest of you, thank you all so much for joining us. I know that you've gotten a lot to think about as well as we walk out of this time together. So I encourage you to check out Lindsay and her resources. Hang out with her on Instagram. She's got a lot of really fun things to share there. So go check it out. Follow her, check out her resources, and join her on her website, the YouTube, and everything else that she's got going on. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.